I can show you the world. A shining, shimmering, splendid. Tell me, Albert, when did you last let your heart decide?
A whole new world.
Hey Gooby, you're now listening to Buddy Time. On today's episode, we're diving into some fun conversations about life and the evolving world of content creators with our guest speaker, Albert Young. Ready to turbocharge your day with us? Let's begin our voyage.
Okay, so today we're really happy that we get to do a first ever Buddy Time podcast collaboration with Albert here. Albert, it's so lovely to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I forgot the word.
From our side, we'd love to get to know you a little bit more, Albert. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
So right now I'm based in Thailand. Before this, I worked as a physical therapist in California, and I'm focusing now on content creation in Thailand.
How did content creation come into play in terms of your work?
So my girlfriend is actually a pretty big content creator, and I just got influenced by her to do content creation for myself. Compared to her, I'm pretty small.
Not at all, actually, because you have so many followers. And I was actually really surprised when I first got to meet you. I felt like you're so magnetic in terms of the things that you do. And you're so easygoing as well. And it's so lovely to got to meet you when we got to meet each other. And I was actually really surprised by all the contents that you do and how you get to connect people in Bangkok together through the stories that they share.
Thank you.
Do you have any particular stories that it was really memorable by all the people that you've met so far?
I think the most memorable story so far was with Victor. It was really fun editing that conversation because it was so off the cuff, and we literally did it at an IKEA, a bed. We didn't know where to shoot, because he DM'd me asking if I wanted to collab with him, and I was like, okay, why not? He never interacted with me beforehand, but then it's one of those things where it's like, you're from so-and-so, and okay, this person might be interesting to have a conversation with, and lo and behold, it was pretty interesting. Yeah.
I think it's so brave of him to also reach out to you, because I remember myself looking into this situation. I also thought, if it's me, I wouldn't even really reach out to my friends to do things. I get kind of afraid sometimes to do it. And also from the other side of the story that I've heard, that you are also so open. You were really responsive. You were like, yeah, let's do it, bro. Let's just shoot content. And those sort of essence really does come across in the contents that you make as well. When I watch it, I feel like a lot of people were really engaged with the questions that you ask them. How do you usually look for the people that you normally ask questions and interview?
I don't really look. I'm part of a run club called Sabai Run Club in Bangkok, and I would just talk with people, and if they seemed interesting or if they seemed like they had something interesting to share about Thailand and where they're from and how they compare it, I think I just ask for an interview and we just go that way. It's very simple, actually.
Is there a way that you normally gauge, this person's interesting? Do you overhear things and you're like, I want to know more about that?
To be honest, I think you can find anyone interesting. Everybody has something interesting about them to show or to talk about. There's a lot of people that might not know it. They might think a little less of themselves this way. What would I share with this person? I don't really have anything interesting, but your experiences, just Sin, where are you from?
We literally just had this topic with one of our guest episodes before, which is about asking the question about where are you from. So whenever we got the question of where are you from, I would have to think carefully, how should I answer this question? So both of us, we consider ourselves third culture kid. So when the question, where are you from, is being asked, I would say my nationality, legal nationality, it's Chinese, but I was raised here in Thailand. So I feel more like I belong, but not really a type. I feel more so like I belong here, but not really a Thai person. But at the same time, I also have part of me that it's linked to, the Chinese background, the Chinese way of living with the family. But because I was raised in a Thai setting, but not so much of a Thai setting because I study in an international school. So there's also influence from the Western culture. A lot of this makes us sometimes wonder, so where are we from exactly? So that is a very difficult question that you ask, like, where are you from? If you ask this question to like a third culture kid.
See, that in itself, where are you from? Some people might not find that question interesting whatsoever. But from that one question, Sin already told me this whole dialogue of, I am a third culture kid. I'm Chinese, but I was born and raised in Thailand. That in itself is interesting, in my opinion. I mean, some people might kind of brush that off, but to me, that's interesting.
Are you like, what's your like background in terms of ethnicity?
I'm American-born Chinese, so I was raised in America all my life. So funnily enough, my parents wanted us to assimilate as much in American culture as possible, so they only spoke English to us at home. So I don't know much Chinese, unfortunately. So they were from Hong Kong, but I actually know more Mandarin than Cantonese because I took 2 years of Mandarin in high school. There's things that first generation immigrants do, like in order to assimilate more into a country, like speaking English only at home. And it can go the other way too. Maybe they'll only speak Chinese at home. And then the kids will both have very different experiences in each way. So in my experience, like I wish I had spoken more Chinese at home because right now I can't speak as much Chinese.
可是我这样说的话，你听得懂吗？
听得懂一点点。Like my Chinese is so crap.
Not true, I can understand.
But like 如果我同你講廣東話，你聽唔聽得明？
聽少少，識講少少。
Okay, it's not bad at all.
I personally think that when it comes to communication, if we seek for perfection, I think that these days people put too much emphasis on that, right? Like, you gotta like pronounce it the right way, or you gotta be saying it the right way. And I feel like if we are really hoping for that, which is great, I would say that if you can, that's great. But if you cannot, but as long as you can communicate in a way that both sides understand, I think that's totally fine, right?
Yes, like as long as it's understandable, I think it's fine. I had an interview with a Singaporean and it was crazy. So the interview went a little bit viral, but it was crazy. Like these other Singaporeans were making fun of his accent. They're like, that's not a Singaporean accent. He's not from Singapore.
What is a Singaporean accent?
Yeah, what is a Singaporean accent?
I actually know what Singaporean accent.
Wait, do you actually want to?
This is a hot take, but nothing against Singaporean people. I did talk directly to one of our Singaporean interns in the past. Directly was like coming clean to her, and I was saying like, did you know that before I met you, I felt like Singaporean accent is super hard to understand. I felt like there's so many accents that I've come across throughout my life, but Singaporean for me is one of the accents that doesn't sound very beautiful. So that's my hot take on Singaporean accent. But what I'm questioning and wondering is, what is an incorrect Singaporean accent from the viral video that you interviewed?
They were saying like, he doesn't sound Singaporean. He sounds like he's from Malaysia or something. It's like, come on.
But I mean, like to my understanding, the whole Singapore culture is a mixed culture, right? So it's okay that maybe someone's accent is leaning more towards the other part, but it doesn't mean that that person is not a Singaporean.
Exactly. Here's the thing too, like because his English wasn't perfect, they were making fun of it. And that's crazy to me. Absolutely crazy. Like, why would you make fun of... You think about people learning different languages. Like, why would you make fun of somebody who doesn't speak a language perfectly, doesn't speak a language fluently? When it comes to English, I think people can be a little bit uppity. How do you say? A little bit
proud.
What's the word? Like they want to show status. Like, my English is so proper and
statusy,
high status or bougie or hierarchical. I don't know. But like with English, there comes status, right? And a lot of people that learned proper English, I think a lot of foreigners that learn proper English, they'll make fun of other foreigners that don't speak English in the way that they speak it. So in that way, it's like, I'm better than you because I can speak English better than you.
Yeah, I think that's where I also want to think back to what I mentioned before and why I think that it's kind of sensitive when people start to judge each other in terms of like how well you can speak a language. For me, as long as we can understand each other, I think that's great. Whether or not you want to judge each other, that's a personal thing, right? So that's why when I think about it, people have accents and that's just part of like their culture and where they raise and like how to pronounce certain words. It's developed through the way you speak your own mother tongue, right? And to judge that is sort of like judging them. So I feel like it's not really right to judge people by how well like they can pronounce certain languages, unless you're an actor, like, you need to be able to do that. Other than that, if you have an accent, that's totally fine. And as long as we can understand each other, like, if you're in danger, if you need help, if you want someone to serve you something or order something, go to the toilet. I think these are things that it doesn't really matter if you're speaking an accent that has like, I want to go to like, I can understand you. And then like, if I judge you for speaking like the Taglish, then that's me, right? My own personal take on that. And that makes me probably not a really nice person.
I think the judgment comes from a person's own, self-hate and embarrassment a little bit of their own culture. So they think of their culture as like, oh, maybe it's not as high status as this other culture. Then they want to disassociate from their own culture. Like when a person makes fun of another person for speaking English a certain way with a certain accent, it can probably come from their own sense of like insecurity. Like, oh, my parents spoke the way you're speaking right now. And maybe they feel a little bit embarrassed about how their parents spoke English. And maybe from society itself, they would feel a lot of discrimination. Like they would automatically, like growing up, they would feel that discrimination against their parents for speaking English in a certain way. So I think they learned that, like, oh, if I speak English in this way, I'll also be discriminated against. And I also have to stop speaking this way.
It feels very personal with the way you're...
No, it's personal for me because my parents speak with an accent, right? And my parents, they didn't complain about it at all. But growing up, you can tell my parents, like a second generation kid, you can tell that your parents are discriminated against. It's like, it's very, very obvious in the way they hold themselves in society. So my dad, he was a police detective in Hong Kong. And then he came over to America, and then all of a sudden his status went from high status to this low status, just Asian immigrant. And you can feel it right away. Like going back, I was trying to figure out like, why is my dad so angry all the time? And if you think about it, you go from high status to this low status person who just in society is always looked down upon, always discriminated against. And he has to take care of us too on top of that. So every day he would come back home and he would shout at us in anger. And I was wondering to myself, thinking about it, now that I've worked, right? Now that I know how hard it is to pay the bills, I kind of understand where he's coming from a little bit. Like I kind of understand where the anger is coming from. And you think about his history back in Hong Kong, already like at the top of society a little bit. And then going to the bottom in America, I can understand why he was acting that way.
A lot of the times, the environment also, it's a huge factor to everyone's mental issue, especially when in your dad's case, it's probably not just the environment, it's also his own personal experience, right? Like you said, high status going like dropping, become like a more normal, common status.
Like more even less than status because you're not white American, right? So you're already automatically treated less than.
And when we're put in this kind of environment, there will be certainly some kind of peer pressure as well. Like we tend to, naturally human beings tend to compare ourselves with other people. When we go to a new environment, we compare ourselves with the local people there, with the people who are equally like us. And then we want to make ourselves better, make ourselves be like the local people. I think sometimes the environment that we put ourselves into could it's easier for us to have that courage to maybe learn a new language or to feel more comfortable with the way we speak, I think. Because I can recall, like not really recall. So recently, like I think about 2 months ago. I mean a bit more about myself. I grew up in Thailand, yes, but most of the time I don't really speak Thai. So I can speak Thai, but I wouldn't consider my Thai as a fluent Thai person. But around 2 months ago, I put myself into this completely new environment community where 99% of this community, it's local Thai people. So it's a part-time that I go to now. And I put myself in this environment not having any expectation, but I just know that, oh, okay, I have to just push myself to speak Thai. So I didn't have a lot of fear, I guess, partly because myself, I don't really let fear stop me from doing anything. But partly, I really also want to say that the environment that I was in, the team, like PI's team, right? Shout out to PI, right? They never made me feel like my Thai is a problem. Like they know that I don't speak fluent Thai, but I can still feel okay to just try to communicate myself, or if I have questions, or if I don't understand what they're laughing about, or sometimes they would have, those Thai slang or Thai jokes. I would try to understand what they're laughing about, and then they would teach me what is this joke about. And it's funny, but sometimes the funny comes because they would ask me a certain Thai joke, but I didn't get the joke, and then I answer the joke in a very different way that makes it even funnier. So the whole thing becomes really like, friendly, happy. But if, let's say, I feel a sense of insecurity in that kind of context, I probably might feel like I take things too personally. Maybe I would feel like, oh, why are they laughing at my Thai because I just answered the joke very differently? But it doesn't have to be that way, right? Because to me, I'm like, oh, it was funny because I literally answered it the wrong way, and it just becomes funny, but it doesn't mean that I am not good at all. It's just...
I can totally relate to what Sin has said, because I feel like what I heard is that a lot of the times we're talking about just feeling comfortable in like an environment, right? And feeling like judged or not and things like that. And I feel like usually what I heard is that when we feel judged, it normally comes from ourselves first and our reflection of certain situations. I worked in a creative events agency, and we have to host a lot of events in general. And for me to be a host, that's actually quite something that's out of my comfort zone. I'm not very good at hosting, I would say, for myself. But then when I start thinking about this, and then when I start doing the things that I have to do, like hosting, the manifestation of this thought of like, oh, I'm not good enough will come through. And naturally, people will pick up on the insecurities that I'm feeling. So taking it to what I've heard from Sin as well, it really is different situations of what you're going through, how you're feeling in that moment really governs how you also showcase yourself. So for me personally, what I normally tend to tell myself these days whenever I do anything that I feel insecure about, whether it's for event hosting, whether it's in my daily routine, I tell myself words of affirmations, things that are good. Because if you are your own cheerleader, then everybody would want to cheer for you. That's what I think about, right? So if I feel like, oh, I'm great, I can do this, even if I'm not perfect, I can do it. It's okay if it's not perfect. People are all not perfect. And these people will view me very differently than when I try to say, oh, I'm not good enough. Will I do good enough? When I do this, is it going to be okay? Another example would be like just making friends. A lot of people would think that I am an extreme extrovert. That's actually a mask. I put up a lot of work to be able to whip up a good conversation. Even like doing podcasting, for example, right now, or talking to you, I feel like a lot of the times I have to really work up my strength to be able to be extroverted. And I feel like this particular thing that I'm talking about, telling myself that it's great, you can make new friends, be positive about yourself, and the friends that come into my life will also be positive, really works out. These days, I've been meeting amazing people like you. If you exude out positive energy, I really believe that you can only do good and only good can come to you.
Sonia, I'm the same as you. I'm an introvert, I believe, at heart too. And just like you said, you really can change. It's a mask, yes, but you can change in order to fit a certain dynamic. And just as you said, there are a ton of benefits to doing what you're doing now.
I assume all three of us would consider ourselves as introverts.
I would like to change the narrative. People are going to slam dunk me in the comments or where they're going to do it. I'm an ambivert. So I'm actually, yes, I agree. I can be super extroverted. That comes across because I'm so talkative. Like normally I love to express myself, my emotions, my feelings, my thoughts. I like to communicate whatever it is that I'm thinking to the people that are around me so that they understand where my head's at, you know? And that can come across as very extroverted, which is true to a certain extent. I do consider myself extroverted when I'm with people I know, like with Sin, super extroverted. Now with you as well, Albert, I'm like super extroverted. But then when I meet someone for the first time, I probably have to take 3 shots. Tequila. And then maybe like get into the conversation. In the beginning really is so hard. But as I said, like I always try to, hype myself up, like the positive things. Now we can continue with after I've said that.
No, but I totally agree and understand what you're trying to say because I'm somewhat similar to your style as well. But in general, we identify ourselves as more so on the introvert side, right? But see what we're doing right now, like content creation, podcasts, all of these things that we're trying to do, events, the company that we built, events, meeting a lot of people. These are the so-called extrovert jobs, right?
Yeah.
How, like in your case, when you started your content creation, how did you feel about yourself? Like you have to put yourself out there.
I think the first time is always the most difficult, but then once you do it, it's like, oh, this isn't that bad. I think the first time, the first time I did it, like at the Run Club at least, I was like, I was having a conversation with a friend called Andy, shout out Andy, and I was just wondering, maybe I should post this conversation. Maybe it's something I can just do. Like that's why I don't like, I like this conversational style more than like asking questions and getting answers. It's like I like this back and forth so we can both kind of, and I feel like for me that's the type of content I like doing. And honestly, it's like, think about it, it's like it's just having a conversation and we don't even have to care about the camera. Like what is that? Like we just have a conversation, and if anything interesting comes up, we just post it. That's it. Have you ever heard of Just Kidding News?
So Just Kidding News?
Just Kidding
I haven't
News.
heard Just Kidding News.
Okay. All right. So they're like an Asian American kind of podcast group, but like their whole thing is they're just hanging out. They're hanging out with friends amongst themselves, and they just talk, and it's funny, and it's like you're just hanging out with them too. So I feel like in that way, I want to do that too. Anybody can do it.
So would you say that the way you started your content creation process was quite natural? You were just trying to do the things that you feel like you want to do the things that you feel like you're capable of doing?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's how it always starts. Just do what you want to do. Like just do what's part of your life already. Like if you're a dancer, maybe just record yourself dancing. If you're a singer, record yourself singing. If you draw, record that. That's very popular. Like art on Instagram is very popular. if you're an artist, record yourself making art.
So you didn't experience the kind of fear that wanting to stop you at first. When I try to recall myself, I think I share about this in our very first episode about how me from a really, really shy girl becoming a person who's able to socialize or network whenever I have to, especially in, business setting, networking situation. So I was really shy back then when I was a little girl. But as I grow up, I developed this kind of skill. So, but whenever I try to recall my transformation, I had that process, like I need to actively put myself in an environment where I need to get used to it. So that's how I developed this kind of skill. But that was coming from the fear that I had before, right? Because I was shy, I was an introvert, right? Even the same case with Sony's story just now. We had to do the stuff because of the fear that we had. But but for you, it sounds like because you're just naturally doing the things that you wanted to do, but you didn't seem like you experienced that kind of fear at all.
I think it's always going to be unnatural at first. I don't think I experienced much fear, but it was unnatural for me. Like talking on camera, I would just like with my eyes, I would just talk on camera and practice talking on camera, and I would always have these weird eyes. I don't know. It's like
You mean Asian eyes?
Asian
Which is
Asian eyes,
non-existent.
Yeah. No, it's weird. It's like how I was looking at the camera. When you record yourself for the first time, it's super awkward, right?
It's just like when you to see yourself, to hear yourself.
Cringe.
I don't like this. I'm never posting on social media. Yeah, but as you do it more and more and more, it gets natural, and you have to make it kind of a part of your life if you really want to go the social media route. So you have to make it a habit, a routine to just create, I think, as much as possible. Yeah.
So what's your routine? How do you routine yourself with all the content that you do?
Well, since I don't have a job,
This is
I just-
you know how hard it is. I mean,
Yeah.
I you know better, but do you know how hard it is to be a content creator? She's saying it to a content creator.
it's a job that I'm doing for free right now. I don't make any money from this.
I mean, shout out to all the sponsors.
Yeah, but it's like, no, you have to put effort. You have to make a conscious effort and a conscious decision to actually create. It's like working out. I think people who work out, if they don't work out, they find it very unnatural to not work out. It's like, oh, I didn't go to the gym today. This feels wrong. It's like, oh, I didn't brush my teeth today. I gotta go brush my teeth. I didn't take a shower today. I gotta go shower. It's ingraining that habit into your daily life and just making it part of you.
I'm just wondering, do people not brush their teeth and walk out of the house I didn't brush the teeth today. Let's go out. Go out.
Maybe they forgot. Wait, but do you need some kind of inspiration for your content?
I've always been, well, what do you mean inspiration?
Because I am also trying to ask from the perspective of, I assume most new content creator that sometimes they're still in the realm of exploring their category or their style. So they would need to constantly think of, oh, what content should I create for this week, for next week, for this month? Which kind of content represents myself better? What type of content will become viral? And they all need some kind of inspiration or idea.
I see. For me, my start was I read books, right? I used to read a lot of self-development, a lot of business, and from whatever book I was reading, if I found a page out of that book interesting, I would just record myself just reading the book to the screen. So I didn't really, it wasn't an inspiration type of thing where it's like I saw somebody else's content. It was just me, okay, I'm going to practice creating content I'm going to practice being in front of a camera and just talk in front of a camera. That in itself is like, yeah.
I think you should give yourself some credit, because after hearing that, I think it's so amazing that you would, seeing something inspirational on someone else's page and putting it into your own way, that is also creative, and that is also like an inspiration of some sort. I feel like a lot of these days, I think going into what Sin has like mentioned about fear as well, too many people these days are too fearful to try just anything, and not just like something, like anything. They're like so fearful about that they don't even start. And I think the tip that you just gave is so insightful, that people should just find whatever it is that they want to do, and just maybe it's just a practice. They can do that, right? Because if you don't start somewhere, then when do you start, and where do you start? And a lot of the ideas that you've just shared, I also resonate with, because that's how we started the podcast as well. We started season 2 out of a whim. We were like, let's just feature every episode on people's lives and what they want to share in their lives. And God knows who wants to listen to it. I don't care. I love it. I love to connect to people. I love meaningful things that mean something to me. And is it going to work? I don't know, but am I going to do it? Heck yeah, I'm going to do it. So that what you've just said really reminded me of that. And I feel like people these days should just go for it more and just try it out. Even if it doesn't work out, you shouldn't be so hard to yourself that it's like, oh, I've like tried so hard or anything like that. They should just view it as a way of life and just a growth process of like, this is something they've tried. And if it doesn't work out, it's okay. Then move on. It's all right. Like failing, I don't believe in. I only believe in stepping stones to success.
Exactly. And to be honest with you, this is an experiment for me as well. All this stuff, like it's like all these interview stuff, your content will change over time depending on what your interests are. So you don't really have to stick to one thing. In the beginning, since my girlfriend was teaching English, she also told me, oh, you should teach English too. So I would teach English and like Thai to English, stuff like that. And that way I could learn a little bit of Thai too at the same time. And then it went to like vlogging, and now it's just interview stuff. But it's all an experiment, and I don't know if I'm going to keep doing this interview stuff or I'm going to go into something else. But it really doesn't matter how you start as long as you start.
To start something is most of the time is the expectation that they have. So let's say I want to start being a content creator, then I would have this expectation of I need to grow my account follower base to a certain amount. But the what ifs, like what if I couldn't make it? What if the contents couldn't go viral? What if like during the process, like there would always be a lot of the what ifs, but all of these what ifs are because of the expectation that we have. I mean, it's okay to, have a goal, definitely have a goal, because that's where we will work towards to, but know that everything is a process, and this process is not always, a straight linear growth. It's always like ups and down, but these ups and downs are always growing as well. Recently, I really like this new mindset, not really a new mindset, but sort of like a phrase that I will always remind myself is just do it for myself. Whatever I do, just do it for myself. If I want to do content creation, yeah, just do it for myself. If I want to try something new, yeah, just do it for myself. Like, who cares? Like, as long as I am doing it for myself and I fulfill what I want in that moment, that's all that matters. Like, what I did at that moment created something meaningful and inspire somebody next to me. Great, that's the bonus. But if nothing happened, no worries. At least I got to satisfy myself, right?
Yeah.
I think it also runs into a thought that came into my mind right now about how Sin said, like, if it benefits myself, I'm going to do it. It's a great take, I think, because in this world, in this day and age, there are also people out there who, I don't mean in a bad way, but they try to look out for other people. And in the process of looking out for other people, they forget to look about themselves. They forget to take care of themselves. And what Sin just mentioned, I also feel like there is some pros in it as well. Because if you first take care of yourself, you can take care of other people. And the things that you do for yourself can benefit other people too. You know what I mean? So I've realized that like if I don't have any resources, I cannot build myself up to do anything, then what is the point of helping others? Because like, yes, we can be there to support them in spirit, but in this world, there is so much more to exchange than just cheerful thoughts.
I mean, like I'm always a huge supporter of, no matter how kind, how generous we can be, the number one person we should always thank for it's ourselves and take care of. It's definitely ourselves. If we are not able to even take care of ourselves, why do you think you have the ability to take care of the person next to you?
I agree completely. Yeah. I think you should always rank yourself as in priority. Like if you have a list of priorities, your number one priority should always be yourself. You can't, like, how are you going to love another person if you can't even love yourself? How are you going to take care of another person if you can't take care of yourself? It's impossible.
But self-love is such a huge topic as well. Like, in my opinion, I find a lot of people don't really know what true self-love is. Like, so it's self-love, just like what everybody say. I eat good stuff. I buy expensive brand names for myself. I go to like a 5-star hotel. Is that considered as good self-love? But to me, that is just the surface level.
Yeah.
Right.
Just want to bring our conversation back a little bit to the part where I'm actually still curious about like about your parents' story. And I'm very sorry to hear that your dad goes through such a hard experience in his journey, you know, like moving to America.
I think that's most immigrants.
Yeah. And I want to ask a little bit more about that because my parents also moved to Thailand. So in many ways, we were very lucky to be able to stay here in Thailand and still do the things that we do today. With all the things that happened with your parents, how are they now? Like, are they still facing all these, like, you know, bullying and racism? Can I say Camilla Harris? Slot that in.
I think they've been pretty affected by it, to be honest. I think mentally.
Because it must have been hard for you too to see that happening to them, right? And growing up, how did that affect you as well? I feel like must have been really tough. You have a sibling as well, right?
Yeah, I have a sibling.
Are they back in the US?
Yeah. I mean, so growing up, I think it did affect my family dynamic a lot. Like our families, to be honest, it's kind of broken. We're not very close. And I don't know if society is to blame for that, but I would say maybe it's an influence. It's tough to say how much it would influence it, I think. But I know mentally, it wasn't the best situation to grow up in. Yeah, there were a lot of situations where, like looking back on it now, for a child to grow up in that type of dynamic, like, I feel like I'm lucky that I have the opportunity that I have now to be able to even like be where I'm at right now. There's still a lot of stuff that like my dad has done for me to be able to, like, he paid for part of my tuition, like going to school to become a physical therapist. Like if he hadn't, like even going to school for my bachelor's too, like if he hadn't provided for us, my situation would be totally different than it is now. And I have him to thank for that. But I think mentally, he's okay now. But I think for him, I know it was very difficult for him. Very, very difficult. Because, you think back on it, you think back on the what ifs, and it's like, oh, what if I just stayed in Hong Kong and we would have this life in Hong Kong? And yeah, life would have been very different.
Does your dad talk a lot about his experiences, or he doesn't really talk about it?
Do your parents talk about their experience? Oh, they do.
Yeah, that's why like this is such an interesting thing that you brought up, because me specifically, like I can share that when growing up, my dad's like my hero. Hearing his stories and how he was growing up at that time. But the time has changed, you know, for people in the past, I mean, for people right now to hear these stories, they'll be like, what on earth? Like that sort of thing happens. I thought it's just like in the movies. I don't know. Like maybe I'm very privileged now that the people around me are also not really having this sort of stories to tell. But growing up, my dad used to be like working in Taiwan and everything like that. And he would share stories about himself when he was growing up. He has like an older brother who at a very young age passed away because he was heartbroken. He drove himself off a highway that was still building, like, I don't know what year, like 18, 19, something like that, like very young. And like he just passed away. And that was his oldest brother. And my dad has a family of 4, right? And the second oldest is a sister. And she, in the traditional Chinese sense, got married and like left home at a very young age. So that leaves them with like 2 other brothers. And the second brother, he sort of like was a bit rebellious and sort of ran away from home. He was like, couldn't take the pressure of running, like being the household, you know, the eldest in the house to take care of like his father and mother. So he ran away, and it left, the whole family was left with just my dad. Like in a way, my ancestors, they're like, you know, like my grandparents and all this, we've also come from quite like a broken like family. But then I use all of these experiences that my dad went through to really grow as a person. Like my dad told me, like, because of the situation that I've just explained, my dad actually started working in the shrimp peeling factory. At night, he would like go to the shrimp peeling factory and like peel shrimps. You know, the shrimps that we see in supermarket these days where it's like packaged like that style. But in the past, I guess like machinery is not as advanced, so they would use humans to peel them with their hands. And he would go there to peel with his mother. And at that time, Japan was colonizing Taiwan, so a lot of the Taiwanese people also had to be forced to speak Japanese. And my grandfather worked as a shipwright in like the docks. And what happened in short is that the Japanese people came and sort of like sued my grandfather for something. I don't know really much like the details of the story. And because my grandfather couldn't speak Japanese at that time, and the court at that time that was ruling was all ruled by Japanese people, my grandfather couldn't really communicate with the people who charged them to court, and he basically agrees to all the terms, and then he was put to jail. And my dad had to look after like his mother at a very young age. And he told me he was like 12, 13, like very young. And then he worked his way up slowly. And then later on, he became a taxi driver. So he would like drive people, taxi drivers. We know what taxi I don't know that's it. Yeah. And yeah, he would like drive people around. And it's very funny. Like, it's very cool as well in a way, because my dad used to tell me a lot of ghost stories. I don't know if it's true or not, but about him as a taxi driver. Like, he would tell me like one very vivid memory of him was like him taking like old granny home, and she lives in like the mountain, and you know, old times there's not a lot of road and street lights. He would like drive into like the mountains very deep, there's no lights at all. He was like very scared, and the granny is like very old, and then she just randomly was like, oh, let me off here in the mountains somewhere. And my dad's like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah. And then she left the car. And the moment he was like turning the car to go backwards, the granny's gone. So like those are the sort of stories my dad would tell me. And then he would also tell me when I was young, like, there's no ghost, don't worry about it. But he would still tell me this sort of story. Those are really funny. And I'm like, I'm not supposed to be scared after you tell me that story, Dad. Like, what the heck? And then like, again, like long story short, after all that incident, like he had to like bail my grandfather out and all that thing. And then my dad knew that education was very important. So during all this hardship, he was still striving for education at that time. So he would go to school in the morning and then do all the part-time jobs at night, like whether that's shrimp peeling or taxi driver. He said that he would do work at night and study in the morning. And then, like, you know, when your father tells you these sort of story growing up, you feel all the privileges and how well it is that I've been having, you know, like my parents pay for my tuition. I get to travel the world and I have a house to live in. I have food. I don't have to worry about when my next meal comes in. And my dad tells me all this story that he has to fight for his next meal. He has to fight for his education. He pays for his own education. He pays not just for himself, but for his whole family to be able to have a good life, you know. That is something that really stuck with me when I was growing up. And but in a good and bad way, you know, like I also have expectations of myself and what I want to make of myself through those stories. But that's another, topic of discussion. But with the stories that my dad shared with me, this particular story, it has always empowered me to feel the privilege that I have today and the things that he's fought for his future as well, like my dad's future, which is us, right? Like me and my brothers and all these people. I feel very empowered by that. And also I feel like the journeys that he's been through, it also highlights how important education is. My dad was also very lucky. I wouldn't say that it's not just all hard work. I think that there needs to be some luck in there as well that comes into play, because my dad also mentioned how lucky he was that he got to meet very supportive professors in his life, and these professors really got him places. And my dad had to go do military as well during that time, and during military training he was a parachute person, like how when you go to the military you have to be like sorted into different positions, departments, positions, the missionary position, the positions, and my dad got like one of the worst ones. He said that nobody wanted at that time, which was like parachuting. Like you have to like jump off planes and like parachute. I don't know what the technical term for that is. And because during that time, technology is not as good. So people who jump off planes some of them would die.
Yeah.
Because the parachutes won't like open.
Yeah.
And he'd see his like friends like die from like the experience. So he would jump and then like some of them like couldn't open and then they just like sweat, blowing around and just dying, right? So like it's very interesting to hear the world that it was then and then the world that we live in now, how it's so like technological and all these things. So yeah, I don't know where I was going with
no, but you see, like I totally understand, how your family background is, and very similar, like our background, like traditional, more so on the traditional Chinese way, like the parents would literally do anything for the kids, try to work their ass off to.
They would sacrifice themselves.
Yeah, exactly. These are, again, like our privilege, right? Like we're so lucky to have these kind of parents. But I think this kind of sacrifices or way of living or mindset doesn't really happen in the Western world, right? Because they're more independent. They're more like, this is your life. Mm-hmm. You're a grown up now. You go develop the things that belong to yourself. My assets, my properties, if I want to, I can share with you. But if I don't want to, you can't just force me to give it to you. But in most of the traditional Asian way is, I will leave my whole life assets, properties for my, right. It's very different.
Yeah, and I feel like bringing it back to what Albert has shared about, your parents as well, what they've gone through, even though it was so hard to see or experience, it got you here today as well. So everything, I guess, happens for a reason. It comes back to this, and like how we also getting to meet, I feel like that's also for a reason. It's interesting because we've recently also starting to go into a lot of content creation and getting to meet up with different types of content creators and the styles that created. And actually, I feel that with you, the way that we create our, I don't know, just my own evaluation, not to like put any things into anybody's mouths.
What?
But I feel like it's very nice to, after having like this sort of chat as well, is that I feel like our content is very similar with each other. It's just like snippets of life.
Yeah.
Like what we do in our podcast as well really is to feature the essence of someone's life and what they go through, and if they can advise someone, or even if not advice, their own stories can infer some sort of guidance to someone who's listening. And I really appreciate that with the contents that you make on your channel as well. I think that even right now, if it's not making anything, like you said, it means something to you. It means something to us when we connect to it. So I feel like, heck, just do whatever you want to do, and the right people will definitely find us one day.
But I do think that by you becoming a content creator, and you've definitely found a style now for your Instagram account, and it's through not really interviewing people, but having conversation, sharing people's life, but that requires some kind of interviewing technique for sure. But the way you use it, you turn it into a very natural way, conversational way, and that is a skill. And what if you're able to, monetize or utilize that skill even further? You'll never know, where this current stage would lead you to, right?
Whenever you go into something that you don't know, like, to be honest, I don't know where I want to take my platform at all. But I'm just having fun with it. That's it. Even my girlfriend, she was just doing it because she was having fun with it. And she never expected to get big or anything, because she was just teaching English. She was basically just doing what she was learning for herself and putting that online. And then, like, as she got bigger, she realized, oh, I can actually make some money from this. So in a way, it's kind of like lucky. Like, it wasn't really intentional at all. So that's kind of a little bit of where I want to take my content. Like, it's a little unintentional, but I'm just going to post whatever I find interesting. That's it. And then maybe down the line, I can start making money from it.
So I was about to say that I recently also realized, as a creative director, but also content creator myself, let's say just as a creator, not necessarily content, is that the best ideas really come in a whim. Like sometimes you got to catch the moment and just do what you feel, like stop thinking so much, just do it. Literally just do it. It's exactly like what we've said before in this little chat that we have. You should just start and then let the tides take you. If you don't do it at all, how are you going to know if the sea is cold or hot? How are you going to know what the wave feels like? You know what I mean? So, and this has been a reoccurring theme actually with a lot of the people that we've met during our podcast and the interviews. A lot of people have found their niche, what they love to do themselves, really, through just being themselves and doing what they love and just starting. Even if it's something that they might be hesitant about, like, well, I love it, they don't know yet. They just started it and they became what they are today. And hearing that from you as well really is another person in the ballot, being like, yeah, like Albert has been through this and Albert is experiencing some sort of success. Like I don't know, 30,000 followers. That's something, you know?
To me, I actually shared this in one of my recent story. So I call this alignment. So if anyone who doesn't really understand what alignment means, there's a very easy formula to it, which is who you are plus what you do equals a certain outcome. So the happier, the more you align with yourself, the happier you would be in this lifetime. So, for example, alignment can also have a different perspective of describing it. So it's something like authenticity. It's exactly the same, the things that we've been trying to say here. Do the things that you love, even though we don't know where this would take us yet. So if we're trying to fill up the formula, who are you? So who do you think you are? Oh, did I ask that question nicely? Like, who do you think you are? Right? Yeah. Who do you think you are? Yeah. So, like, let's say I'm a person who's very into art stuff or creative stuff. Then you can list down all of that. Who am I? Right? And then I will look at myself today, analyze myself today. The things that I'm doing. So who you are plus what you do. Am I doing the things that resonates or represent who am I? If I am doing the thing that represents who am I, that means I have alignment. That means I will tend to be happy easier. But if I'm not doing the things that align with who I am, it is very natural that we will suffer from the things that we do. For example, a lot of frustration, a lot of stress, ideas just doesn't pop up, and then it becomes a cycle. And then we, in the end of the day, we ask ourselves, why are we so miserable? Why are we so unhappy? It's the answer is very easy. You're not being who you are.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to fit yourself into whatever the society is telling you to do. But have you got back into, again, the previous things that we're saying, self-love?
Yeah.
Do you know who you are enough? Do you have self-love enough to know who you are and have the courage to do what you love? Like Sony said, so many people we connected, like Albert, yourself as well. You guys are just doing the things that you feel right, that you love, and then naturally there comes a great outcome, right? So I am a huge believer of like self-alignment, self-love, do the things that we love, like even though we don't see the outcome right now, but nothing in this world will give us a huge outcome immediately. Everything has a process. So if either way we need to go through certain kind of process, why don't we go through the happiest path?
Yeah.
Right.
So in going back to what you said about knowing who you are, I feel like people don't really know who they are until they actually try something. So you don't know if you're going to be a content creator until you actually try it. So for people who think that, oh, what would I make content about? It's like I feel like I don't really do anything interesting. You can make content about going to work and waiting for retirement. There's literally an Instagram channel about this guy just going to work, and he has like this folder on retirement, like, oh, what I'm gonna do after retirement, and it's literally him blogging his life about his everyday life, going to work. Oh, how is he feeling like right now? It's like, oh, I'm feeling like, oh, I'm the luckiest guy alive right now. I have a job, I have a home, I have a family. And then the next day he's like, oh, I hate my life. My life sucks. And that in itself, it's interesting for many people because they can relate to it. So you might not think you have anything interesting to say or to make content about, but trust me, you do.
There's the things that you share reminds me of another I don't know if I should call him a content creator, because the things that he posts, it's literally the most randomness thing, which he basically recorded himself sleeping. Yeah, and then he was able to garner a lot of audience, a lot of viewers. It was even like alive. It was alive. It wasn't even a content thing. He just turned on the live, and then he was just sleeping all the time, and then people just get into his channel and just watch him literally sleep.
Yeah.
But again, that's like what Albert said. Anything could be interesting.
Yeah.
Even sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can literally sleep now as well.
And you don't know if it's you yet. But once you try it, you might figure out, oh, I like this. And if you try it and if you feel like you don't like it, then you move on. But just try.
It's so nice to get to reflect, not just with you, but also with Sin back to our life, and just talk about what Buddy Time has always been about, which is just about life and reconnecting with our friends on this podcast and sharing a little bit about, insights into life and perhaps a little bit into content creation here in this episode as well. So thank you, Albert, for sparing some time in your very busy content creator's life to be here with us and talking to us and sharing to the listeners a little bit about what you do. I hope that all of you who's listening gets to also follow Albert and his amazing, amazing content on Instagram and any other social platforms that he might have. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
It has been a great time chatting with you as well, and then knowing you even more. We had a chance last time, but we didn't really get to talk much.
Yeah, that was just karaoke. It was like, oh, we're just singing right now.
Yes, we can finish that song again. Yeah, but thank you for joining us today for the podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And also thank you for inviting us, having us on your platform too.
Yeah, definitely.
Check us out on Albert's platform, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Buddy Time. We hope you enjoyed our casual chat with Albert. Be sure to check out his amazing content about life in Bangkok on his Instagram page. We've got another special guest lined up for you next episode. Until then, stay vibrant and go out there and chase your dreams.